Hey everyone, Monarch here, and y'all like spectacle, right? You like seeing fighters of all shapes and sizes beating the ever-living snot out of each other with moves that are named cooler than they actually are, busting through the walls of the arena, and casually destroying a city or two. Yeah? Well, so do I. And in regards to the art of breaking bones, no other video game genre out there manages to capture that feel quite as well as the fighting game genre. Even if you don't actively play them or engage in the competitive scene, I think we can all agree that witnessing the ultimate expression of skill and destruction for a level 3, a super, an astral finish, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is satisfying as all hell. And just like how you can turn off your brain the moment you land it, I want to turn my brain off today and do something easy. So today, we are going to be counting down my 10 personal favorite examples of destruction and mayhem in fighting games. Rules are simple. Supers will be judged on a variety of factors, ranging from spectacle, pacing, impact, characterization, and more. There can only be one super from each franchise, and to make this list even easier for myself, I will be removing the restriction on games I've played. That means that I don't need to have played the game if I want to rank the super on the list, just see it in one form or another. Not much else is needed for this list, I feel. It's pretty basic. So come, let us exchange words through fists and steel. For this is my top 10 favorite fighting game supers. As a whole, I find Under Night In-Birth's Infinite Worths to be incredibly strange compared to a lot of other fighting games. Oh, don't get me wrong, the quality is still good as a whole, but it is off-putting in terms of visual effects, sound, and how they utilize transition scenes for communicating movement or spectacle. For this reason, a lot of these supers don't exactly hit the high notes I'd expect. Some feel fine, if a little slow, some basic, while others feel a little too flat or confusing in perspective. I'm looking at you, Kuon! This is something I should like, but the perspective and everything here just feels so stilted. So when it came to deciding my favorite, it really wasn't a competition for Merkava's Infinite Worth exits to claim the spot. After getting the confirmed burst, Merkava grabs the opponent with his long, slender noodle arms, switching to the view of the victim as he pins us, savagely taking bite after bite out of our flesh as blood loss colors our vision, ultimately fading with the view of the moon in the sky. As a whole, what I think this Infinite Worth manages to accomplish compared to the others is a real sense of brutality. The fact that the super doesn't end with anything like a big flash, explosion, or multiple slashes, but rather the very realistic end of a person dying from blood loss just makes it so incredibly eerie. The character is actively struggling, but ultimately can't escape, body going slack as the life in them vanishes, with the moon being the last thing they see. It all adds to the impact of Merkava peering down, of every bite he partakes. A very good super for the start of a list, and a sign of things to come. It truly is a shame what happened to DNF Duel. The game showed so much promise with its art style, the animations, the characters, the gameplay, all of that and more, yet ultimately died out in a pitiful sputter. I had to check during the production of this video if it was still getting updated, and apparently it is, having 5 DLC characters added since launch, most recently being the Nen Master, who I haven't heard shit about. Really just goes to show how much it died out, I suppose. If there is something I can applaud this game for, though, it is definitely in its animations and ultimates. At first, I was considering maybe Ghostblade or Berserker for the spot, but then I remembered something. the Ranger exists. With a long as fuck blast across the whole screen, Ranger activates what I can only describe as a sort of devil trigger, teleporting in a veil of crow feathers as he bobs and dips around the opponent, pelting them with bullets from all sides before firing one last bullet that sends the opponent flying across the screen. The really striking element about this super is just how fast and dynamic it is. More than just using the simple use of speed and hits equaling being fast and powerful, the super also utilizes different camera angles and movements in order to illustrate the speed of the Ranger. It isn't just that there are a lot of bullets striking the opponent at once, but that it is coming from so many angles one after the other that you can't think of a way to defend yourself. And by the time there's a breather, he's already unloading one last bullet into your skull. It's a super move that really stands out, and for good reasons. With both the heroes and villains of Marvel and Capcom respectively at its disposal, the MVC series of games have a lot of good ultimates at their disposal to choose from. Some obvious ones off the top of my head for contenders are Dante's Danse Macabre, Virgil's Dark Angel, Ghost Rider's Penance Stare, and more. But in terms of a super that strikes the perfect balance for me, we're gonna have to look at its most recent and weakest entry. Oh, Infinite. Poor little Infinite. At least he made some sick new DLC characters, especially in the case of our number 8 entry, Sigma and his hyper combo named Final Sigma. Real creative naming convention here. Upon confirming the hit, Sigma will transport his victim into cyberspace, harassing them with 4 cyber clones of himself, each one comboing off the other until the opponent gets thrown up into the air and impaled on all their sabers. I think what this hyper combo manages to do really well is the sense of progression in each action. Everything from the grab, the transition into cyberspace, to how the camera twists and turns with each clone is done well, all the way up until you are abruptly booted out of cyberspace. Not to mention the impact, especially with the clones in that final hit, feels good. And all the while, you get to hear Sigma cackle like a madman saying that you should bow to him. What a guy. Now as for why an ultimate from MVC3 didn't get in, I don't know. I just felt like it. And here, ladies and gentlemen, you see probably one of the hardest entries on the whole list to make. Not because of any problem with selecting the series, because I knew it would be Street Fighter, but because of the funny little thing called the time. I already had this segment all scripted. I would have had this all fine to record, but Capcom decided to pull a funny trick on me and unveil Akuma's Street Fighter 6 trailer in the middle of production, as well as his release date. So, as a result, I had to wait around and see the release of Akuma in Street Fighter 6 before I could go forward. And now, I have to make a complicated choice. Do I go for my original selection of Oni's Tenshi Sokaigen from Street Fighter 4, or the new and improved Raging Demon from 6? I went back and forth on this, looking between the two with their effects, the sound design, and the action, trying to look at the finest details, knowing I wouldn't get the full impact by not playing it. It took looking back on other people's reactions to decide, but I ultimately went for the new and improved Raging Demon in Street Fighter 6. I mean, where do we even start with this? While the Raging Demon has always been associated as this blink and you'll miss it move, one so fast and deadly that we are not allowed to see it fully, Street Fighter 6 decides to say, nah, we are going to let you see more of what goes on, and make it even more horrifying. I mean, the dude literally starts swarming all around you in the air after having already beat the shit out of you, just to pummel you into the dirt even more. It still communicates that crucial idea of the Raging Demon being fast and unseeable, but in a different way, making it more of a dreadful, omnidirectional sense of speed, not knowing which the Akumas in the air will attack, before rushing down on you so fast you feel the full brunt of 1,000 fists. Best of all though, besides the visuals and sound design, is the voice and text throughout, being apparently a reference to the Street Fighter III Ryu Final manga.
1,000 strikes in a flash, pulling mountains off the ground. Sounds of ghouls' cries. Thus, Goki I am.
I honestly never thought such a dramatic shift in presentation would work for a Raging Demon, but Capcom honestly managed to pull it off extremely well. For many people, this might be the new go-to Raging Demon. Out of most of the other games on here that I have seen but not played, Granblue as a whole is probably the one that interests me the most. Just going off a quick dive into the deep end in terms of the characters, the lore, the world building, as well as the godlike music, there is a lot here that I can see myself liking. And I have to owe my thanks to Granblue Fantasy Versus and its Ultimate Edition Rising for sparking this interest. Arc System Works really uses their budget and expertise in 3D animation to its fullest effect here to make the character animation pop. So much so that choosing my favorite Super Skybound art was incredibly difficult. Through a lot of nitpicky deliberation, however, I decided to go with Ladiva's Super Skybound art, The Shape of Love. Upon grabbing the opponent, Ladiva throws her enemy into the ring, bouncing them off the rope and pinning them to the floor. As she holds down the opponent, the referee comes in, counting down all the way to 3 and slowly draining the HP from the opponent. Should the opponent be at low enough health, the match will end with the opponent unable to get up. If the opponent does not have low enough health, then the referee will not be able to get to the count of 3, and the opponent will stand back up. Obviously speaking, the details in the Super Skybound art are fantastic, from the different endings depending on the health state, as well as the different facial expressions certain characters will make while being pinned down. But I think what makes this one my favorite is the sense of forward momentum. All of the others that I was considering for the spot generally had one thing in common. One really good moment in terms of impact, sound design, motion, or whatever else, but had some point in which it fell off. Here, the action and sense of momentum doesn't let up for a second. From the grab to the throw and to the pin onto the ground, the game is still throwing in new camera angles, elements like the referee and the countdown, and even adding in an element of suspense as the clock gets closer to the 3-second mark. It's honestly a perfect Super Skybound art for a character like Ladiva, but there are still some supers I like more. Coming off the various trailers for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I think it is as good a time as any to look back on the history of the previous big Dragon Ball fighting game, Dragon Ball FighterZ. Though it may be in a bit of a lull period, especially because of a disastrous rollback release earlier this year, FighterZ was quite the smash hit for Arc Sys and Dragon Ball, having 3 entire seasons of content, plus an extra bonus character of Labcoat 21. And you can really tell that Arc Sys loved Dragon Ball, because there's so much care and referential material packed into the characters, their movesets, supers, and even dramatic finishes. Speaking of, sorry, but I'm not counting the dramatic finishes for this video. They're extremely cool, don't get me wrong, but they don't exactly fall into the criteria of what I'd consider a super, acting more like an extra bonus to the round. If I was ranking them, I'd probably go with either one of the Gogeta finishers. Regardless, that leaves me with a wide range of level 3s to choose from, and it didn't take me long to decide honestly, because Super Baby 2's Great Ape Assault hits different. So, for complete context, I don't really watch Dragon Ball, and from what I see and know, GT is considered the black sheep of the franchise. So, any references here when it comes to GT and Baby as a character is something I'm going to have to ask a more knowledgeable friend about. Even disregarding all of that, I can really see just how special Super Baby 2 is as a character. The second of 3 GT characters to be included in Fighters, who happens to be one of the main villains, while also twisting the archetype of being a Saiyan-like character with one of the rawest outro screens in the whole game? Oh hell yeah! And Great Ape Assault manages to hit all of those special notes that the character does and more. The attack starts as a short flash of green from Baby, which, if it connects, will show off a cinematic of Baby being doused by some light and transformed into an Ozaru. From there, Baby will grab the opponents and repeatedly slam them into the ground, before causing an explosion in the ground below them from his newfound strength. Despite its simplicity and not being all too flashy, Great Ape Assault wins me over compared to other level 3s, mainly due to brownie points. For one, this is the only instance in the whole game, if I recall correctly, where an Ozaru or Great Ape gets shown off, which is a massive lore nod both to the roots and powers of the Saiyans, as well as GT with Blutz waves. Second, it is one of the only transformation-based supers in the whole game, with a few other instances being Goku Super Saiyan 3 transformation, Golden Frieza, and GT Goku under certain conditions. The last point is that it is a level 3 that actually has 2 different variations. If performed when an ally is defeated, the latter parts of the animation will be changed to Baby instead doing a Great Ape powered Gallic gun at the opponent, which is a really cool detail. There's a lot of other level 3s that could have taken this spot, with Super Broly and Super Gogeta being close candidates. But ultimately, Baby 2 edged out for just how unique of a level 3 it is in this game. All things considered, there's nothing really quite like it. In a list filled with so many fighting games, many of which having been developed by Arc System Works, there is no way I could not include their premier 2.5D fighter, Guilty Gear, onto the list. The 2.5D art style and models introduced in Exurge Sign changed the game for ArcSys and their fighting games, bringing animation and graphical fidelity to a whole new level that would continue to be used in other projects down the line like Fighters and DNF Duel. And that quality carries over into the instant kills of this game, being so high in effort overall that picking a definitive winner was grueling. Or at least, I thought it would be, because Dizzy's emotional gamma ray was my first choice, and it still is my definitive pick. Launching into the super with a surprise punch, Necro, the Blackwing, begins charging a gamma ray blast for Dizzy, before she throws herself into her wing stand, causing the blast to veer off course and instead hit the far-off mountains in the distance, resulting in a fucking nuclear blast as the enemy surrenders out of fear. What? It is such a simple super. This honestly might be one of my shortest in terms of actually describing it, but my god, the animation and personality on display is outstanding. You really get a feel behind the impact of the gamma ray with the shaking of the camera, the movement, the camera angles used, and the sound effects. My god! The best part about this instant kill by far though is the character on display, and how it accomplishes the task of being an instant kill in the context of Guilty Gear, but manages to still embody Dizzy's pacifism and reluctance to fight, even changing the expressions of the opponents depending on who it is, with characters like Slayer shrugging it off, while Raven... Is he getting off to it? Honestly, this is just the whole package of expressing character in a fighting game, and it is a lesson others should learn from. The topic of Super Smash Bros. As a fighting game and whether or not it constitutes for a list like this is a long, heavily debated topic within the fighting game community. One that I will not be contemplating today, because I don't really care. Ultimately, it has fighting game elements, it has a dedicated competitive scene, has been featured in many official fighting game tournaments, and more importantly for today's countdown, has super equivalents with Final Smashes. When it comes to this topic, I know most people are likely to pick Mega Man's Mega Legends. And sure, it is a really cool Final Smash that deserves all of its praise and more at a time when Capcom had all but abandoned the franchise. But the thing is that I'm not really a Mega Man fan. The tricky thing with a referential move like this is that you have to know the reference, or have the context to appreciate it. And I just don't, due to not really owning the franchise. Rather, I decided to choose something of similar importance, but one that is closer in connection to me. Take it away, Ridley! And here we all thought he was too big for Smash. For almost 2 decades, Smash and Metroid fans had been clamoring in their seats to see the Space Pirate King himself, teased and denied in every game since Melee with its inclusion. Intro only in Melee, boss exclusive in Brawl, stage hazard in Wii U and 3DS. It all seemed lost. But then came the announcement trailer for Ultimate, and the people's prayers were answered with one hell of a bang. Everything about Ridley, from his savage appearance, brutal fighting style, and cunning demeanor, were captured expertly in his inclusion, and his Final Smash Plasma Scream was the perfect crescendo for it. Upon activation, Ridley charges forward in a straight line at his opponent, knocking him directly into Samus's ship should it connect. The ship's emergency escape system activates and immediately starts making a beeline. Not before the devious dragon notices, however, and charges a beam straight at the ship with the person on it, piercing through both as he looks on proudly at the chaos he created. Like a lot of other Final Smashes in Ultimate, it's hard to go in depth about it since it goes by so quickly. But Plasma Scream, I feel, has the perfect pacing and detail to go along with the game. It's fast, calculating, and oh so cruel. I even like the detail where after the final smash, you can see the gunship in the background of a stage you are playing on crashing, which is really cool. It may have taken him nearly 2 decades to make it in, but Ridley's entrance into Smash was the ultimate love letter a Metroid fan could have wanted. Hail to the Space Pirate King, baby! I'm sorry, guys. I really tried not to be predictable. What do you want from me? Like, oh yeah, what a big surprise! It's not like this is my favorite fucking fighting game ever, much less in my top 3 games of all time. It's not as if this is a franchise and story I like so much that I dedicated a huge chunk of my identity to it. And it's not like Susanoo is my favorite playable character ever! What might be the biggest surprise, however, is that his Astral isn't number 1. And trust me, this was also a fact I boiled over, especially when BlazBlue has so many amazing Astral finishes that I didn't know if I should stick to my guns or pick something else. Ultimately, you can see which option I chose. So let's cut out all of the bullshit preamble and get right into this damn character and super, which can be neatly summarized by a single phrase: must die! Gigantic damage and up-close brutality is the name of the game with Susanoo, trading in any and all elegance or trickery that Terumi or Hazama might have had for raw efficiency. And Roar of the Mad King is the ultimate testament to Susanoo's brutality, slamming the enemy away from the force of his impact before generating every last bit of destructive energy into a gigantic sword, slashing it downwards into the ground, creating multiple separate energy slashes across the screen before one final slash comes directly into the camera and annihilates the opponent. In the aftermath, we see the painting that he has created, a desolate wasteland devoid of all life, as a monument of the world he wishes to create. Okay, So why this? Why this Astral in particular over every other in the game? An Astral that many in the community consider mediocre, lackluster, and even a little lame considering that it is one of the few Astrals in the entire franchise to get patched, adding in the extra 97 hit effects as well as slashes in the Jubei update. Well, for one, this is my list. Community consensus means little to me. Second, I really like how well this encapsulates Susanoo as an unrestrained extension of Terami's character, uncaring about anything around him, not having a reason to hold back because, well, why should he? He is a capital G god at the end of the day, and now he is back with his full power after millions of years without it. It is his purpose to destroy, so destroy he shall, without discrimination. It also serves as an excellent offensive, in-your-face contrast to Hakumen's more delicate, calmly collected, counter-based astral finish, showcasing how the different wielders in possession of a Susanoo unit utilize its capabilities. And the third note being that I just really like it! Ultimately, the reason it is only a number 2 is because too much of a reason I like his Astral overlaps with Susanoo himself. I already have a pretty strong bias towards him as my favorite playable character, and I can't in good faith give it the top spot, even if I might have more to say. Regardless of all that though, this is still one hell of a bang to end off BlazBlue's original story. One that I'm still waiting on to get continued. When making these rankings, while games like BlazBlue and Guilty Gear were surefire contenders for being included, choosing their placement was much more difficult. These last few choices, and number 7 especially, were brutal, trying to not be predictable with my choice, but wanting it to be truly accurate to how I felt. Like, is Susanoo's astral finish actually that good to claim the top spot? Or is that just because of Susanoo being my favorite playable character in any fighting game? This stalemate, however, quickly ended once I considered the roster selection from Final Fantasy Dissidia Duodecim. It took all of a few seconds before I instantly knew what it would be and where it would go. So give it up for my favorite super in any fighting game, Feral Chaos's Regnum Day. The display of power can take many forms, as we have seen throughout today's countdown. Power can mean the ultimate expression of one's fighting technique and skill, mastery and finesse over raw talent. Power can mean the heart of one's character, showcasing how they use their technique through their actions. And power can of course mean raw, unadulterated brutality. No super, however, in any fighting game I have seen, has ever managed to grasp ultimate power. Power that is so complete and absolute that there is nothing you can do. Except for one. Feral Chaos is that one. The transformation of a deity through endless cycles of conflict and victory, broken ultimately by the heartbreak that started it all. Now nothing more than a mindless beast, with the body containing its unfathomable power, shattered and leaking out. It roams the broken remains of its home universe, looking for any living survivors to crush. Not for any particular reason, but just because. Everything about Feral Chaos's combat is pure, animal brutality leaking out of a cage of a god. And the culmination of all of this is the pinnacle of power itself. Upon activation, Feral Chaos charges into the opponent, grabbing them with his 4 arms and throws them into the dimensional barrier that makes up the super background in the game. Oh yeah, that's how you know this is special. Once thrown into the space outside, Feral Chaos will have free reign to attack the opponent for 20 seconds in order to boost his bravery, at which point a cinematic will start, showcasing the enemy getting lifted up and impaled on numerous gigantic blades, before finishing off on Feral Chaos punching the opponents from their point of view, with a TV static filter, as if the system turns off the moment it lands. Holy shit! Needless to say, this blew younger me's mind back when I first saw it, and even now it has a very long-lasting impression on the kind of supers I like in any fighting game. The brutality, the gameplay interaction, the cinematography, the spectacle, the first-person view, the effects, and the fake screen shut-off! It all just combines into an unforgettable super that, alongside his main battle theme, made me quite appreciative of Dissidia Duodecim. It is for all these reasons and more that Feral Chaos's Regnum Day is my favorite super in any fighting game. For now. I doubt there will be anything in the future that will beat these top 2, but in terms of the rest of the list, we'll just have to see. I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and thanks for tuning in to this highly destructive and intense countdown. I hope this helps in terms of selecting what characters you'd be able to beat in a fight, and who would easily kill you. Definitely don't piss off the gods, or the spaghetti noodle monster. Definitely don't get on Necro's bad side, and Lediva? Honestly, Lediva might just be the most tame one here. Take care everyone, and until next time.